This is Karl from Nile. You're listening to the Brutally Delicious podcast.
Chris, you want to jump in?
Okay, so I just listened to the track, and to be honest, I didn't know your past, like about Nile or anything like that. Bruce just informed me of it. I'm kind of new to metal, so you'll have to forgive me. And I look behind you, and I see amps, and I see guitars, I see metal. But I listen to the track, and I hear like all of this crazy ambient instrumental stuff with world instruments. How did you kind of decide to do that? And how did you make it happen? Were you using samples? Was it real instrumentation? How did that come about?
Well, years ago, back like '03 or so, I got my first bagla massage, which I could go in the next room and bring it in here. One second. Take
Yeah.
1 second.
Look at all those guitars.
Just a couple.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, right now I'm working on Nile songs, so everything in my studio is the electric stuff.
Yeah.
This would be a glissentar. It's an 11-string fretless, made so you can get oud sounds in a guitarist-friendly format.
That's cool.
That's one of the things that I play a lot. This is the bagla massage. It's a long-necked Turkish lute. And it's in this dust case otherwise it's a dust collector. It refuses to stay in tune.
Oh, look at that thing.
Oh, that's cool.
And you can see it's got movable frets, and some of them are microtones, where it's just a quarter tone. It's not a normal half step.
Yeah.
So you actually have 17 notes to an octave.
Oh, wow.
The strings are in courses, so the bottom two are an octave apart. The middle is unison. Well, it would be unison if it were in tune. This does not stay in tune very well. It surely doesn't stay in tune when it's inside its case. And these are tuned in a fifth, and it's 3 strings.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's quite a unique instrument.
The first time I ever saw one of those, I didn't know what it was called, but there was a band from Canada called the Tea Party, and they use that a lot.
Yeah, the Tea Party. Yeah.
They use those a lot. Yeah.
Do you write on those?
You know the Tea Party?
Not personally.
Oh,
No.
but you know their music.
I know their music, though.
Oh, that's cool. I don't meet many people in the U.S. that know the Tea Party. Like, no,
Actually,
of the Tea Party.
Ashmedi from Marrakesh turned them on. Turned me on to them.
Oh, really?
It's like, dude, you got to hear this band. Yeah, Ashmedi.
That's great. Do you find yourself writing on those kind of instruments, or does that stuff come in later? You write on the guitar, which is your main instrument, and then add those sort of...
Usually, yeah, a song will start on the guitar, because that's what's in my hands every day. And then I'll go, well, you know what? This would be pretty cool as a Saz riff or as a glissentar riff, because there's 2 widely different things. So yeah, a lot of them just start on the guitar. That's really the basis of all the songs on this record. It starts with my hands,
Right.
and everything else is just bringing that life and context.
Are you writing the story? Because I know this is the third part in, I guess, the series. 2-part question. Are you writing the story first and then adjusting the music to it? Or how does that work? And second, is there going to be more to this, or is this a trilogy?
When I'm writing it, the ideas all sort of come at once, and each side feeds each other. That was a tongue twister. Wow. Okay, so like if I'm playing the guitar and I'm like thinking about it, and I'm like seeing the movie in my head, right? that story in the guitar, they kind of simultaneously evolve, and one will pull, then the other will pull, and it just sort of all happens. Which is why how I came up with the idea of the book that goes along with the record uh, was because it was more than lyrics. It was like way more,
Right.
right? Couldn't possibly fit all this stuff into a lyric format for songs. So it's like, this is a book. It's a fucking book. So yeah, I've done two full drafts. It's right about 45,000 words.
Wow.
I'll probably finish it up, do a third draft whenever I finish this next new Nile record.
Is writing books something that you've always done? Have you done it before, or is it something that just hit you and you're like, I'm going to do this?
The second, because yeah, I'm not a writer. So because I'm not a writer, this is like the first thing that I've really written, other than doing interviews or liner notes or
Right.
whatever. I don't actually know what I'm doing. I pretty much know how to write songs, play the guitar, make metal records, go on tour, manage to come home with a few dollars. These are skills that I've honed over my metal career, right? But writing, that's a whole other thing. And I'm a complete beginner. And when you're just learning how to do something, it it's not like Stephen King sitting down, oh yeah, we can finish a
Right.
book in a couple weeks. Pow! No, right? Because I'll write something and go, this is fucking awful, right? It's fucking awful, all right? There, you can have a story, but being able to tell that story in a way that somebody gives a fuck about reading, that's a whole fucking art. No wonder these fucking authors get paid big bucks. It's
Right.
not as easy as it looks. You can say the words, yeah, I'm going to write a book, right? It's one little sentence. I'm going to write a book. 6 words. I'm going to write a book. Easy to say. That's not necessarily a guarantee that it's going to make for something easy to read.
Yeah, I
You
feel
know,
like a lot of people say that, oh, I'm going to write my book or I'm going to write a book. But you're right, when you get down to it, I mean, the discipline it takes probably, and it's a whole nother art form to learn as well, right? If you have no background in it.
Hmm.
oh, it's crazy. I took a creative writing class, and the teacher would always talk about, like, if you want the story to move faster, you have to use smaller words, and if you want to slow the reader down, you have to expand your vocabulary. And she would always
I'm going to
drive
make a
that
note of
home.
that. Let me get my pen and paper and make a note of that.
She would always say that. And I didn't really get it at the time. I was just like, well, you just read at a speed, like, and then I started, like, you brought up Stephen King. And when you read his books, he speeds you up by using like these tiny words, and then he slows you down and starts to bore you intentionally. You know, it's interesting.
I don't know. I'm gonna look at that. I'm gonna look at a few books and look at the pacing and examine how that works.
I've never thought
Okay.
about that. I have
Thank
one
you.
more question about book writing here, and I know that's kind of not why we're here, but do you have when you're writing, do you already have the whole scenario in your head, or does it morph as you go along and kind of write in your head as you're moving? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Usually there's like enough like in my head to fire me and get me going, but like as I'm, the ideas keep coming, right? And one thing will lead to another, and so you don't necessarily have to know exactly the whole thing when you start. You just gotta have enough to get going,
Right.
which is kind of like when you're improvising and playing guitar solos, right? Especially in blues, jazz idioms, you don't necessarily have to have the whole entire thing planned. It morphs and finds new paths all by itself, and that's part of the joy of creative discovery. Is wow, we're alive.
Right.
Anything could happen.
It seems like creativity is like a massive part of your life. I mean, I know that sounds like a dumb statement. I know that sounds like a stupid statement, but we interview a lot of musicians, And they talk about like the recording of their record, or they talk about how they co-authored a book with someone, and they talk about kind of like mundane things. But you are kind of deeper into the creative process than most people we interview. Like you're very aware of your creative process.
Well, I like procreating to start with, right? So I already like it, right? The fact you can just make stuff come into existence, and you don't necessarily have to plan it. It can just happen.
Yeah.
Right. Takes on a life of
Which
its own
is
once you
probably
get.
a lot of the way. Yeah, I think life on Earth developed this way. I don't think there was a big plan to start with. I think shit just happened, and a lot of random possibilities are possible along the way. It could have diverged, any number of places, and it probably did, because where we started from and where we are is not a straight line.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
not a straight line. You can look backwards and trace the evolution, but
Yeah.
when the first, one-celled creatures, started doing whatever they were doing at the bottom of the ocean while nobody was looking, they didn't have a big plan. They were just doing it,
Yeah.
and I like that. I really like you don't have to necessarily plan it all out. I mean, a lot of shit that we do as a band or musicians, you got to plan. You gotta have a plan that gets you started. But if you can adapt when you need to, it's possible to go places you never conceived of when you first started. Um, and you got to do that. You know what? Nile, if I look back at the history of Nile, this is not at all how I envision it happening.
Really?
Not at all. There were plenty of times we had to go, okay, we either got to adapt or die. One or the other. I choose adapt. Right?
Right.
And adapting, wow, that means you just open the door to, okay, there's probably several possible ways to go forward. You can't do this thing anymore, so you got to do something else.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I love the fact that you're not shy to talk about the creative process, And that like as a creative person myself, I find it very refreshing because I talk about creativity in this way too a lot. And people are often like, "Oh
Hmm.
God, like why are you getting so deep on me? You just pick up a guitar and you play it and it happens, whatever." But which is true on the surface, but when you get
On the
really,
surface.
yeah, but when you really get into it, there's so many emotions and, like you say, it pushes and it pulls you and it tugs you and yeah,
So,
You got to be ready to be Ginger Rogers, right? If Fred Astaire starts putting some new dance moves, you either, follow along, be willing to change the plan, or martial arts. I did martial arts for many years, right? And there's a very old saying that everybody's got a fucking plan until they get punched in the face. Or, said another way, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. So, right, you have to be willing to go, okay, this plan or this technique is no longer working.
right.
yeah,
It's time to invent a new way of looking at it, come up with a new idea, adapt some other technique to the situation, and that's why fighting is so much fun. Because there's constant creativity to it. I see so many parallels, between playing music and martial arts. I mean, if you're actually engaging in like real sparring or actual fighting, then you have to do this. If you're just running kata which is a preordained set of moves. It's, you do this one, you do this one, you do this one, and you're judged on how well you followed the line,
Yeah.
the plan of techniques, right? But if you're actually sparring, you have to adapt and be willing to recognize what's working, what's not working, where your opponent's strengths are, where their weaknesses are. When they make a tactical error, to be adaptable enough to see it, adjust, and capitalize. Yeah, sometimes I think when you're writing a song, sometimes it's like that. Like you see this little opening, right? That opened up. Somehow it's just a little crack. And if you pivot and strike in the right place, now that becomes a fucking opportunity to come in and capitalize on this opening that may not have been there 2 seconds ago. Right? It's creativity, fighting. There's so many parallels.
So I have a question for you, and it's about the creative process again. Are you one of those creatives, like most people I know, where you almost have like a creative ADD? There's so many things, and if so, how do you narrow them down to what you're gonna work on today? Because I know my list is like a mile long of things that I really want. I want to write my book. I want to work on the podcast. I want to do this, that, or the other thing. There's too many of them. I can't even keep track anymore.
I have a warboard. On the other side of this door is a giant dry erase warboard, and I got 2 of them. And that's where I prioritize the things that I want to work on, and I can fucking see it. And it really helps with finding some clarity about, oh, this is what I should work on today.
Right.
Also, 1 second. I'll show you. I get some visual aid.
No, I'm good.
Even when I'm just playing guitar, whatever song that I'm working on, right, I'm always ready. Always ready. If I'm playing guitar and I got my lyrics right next to me, like I'll go, you know what, this idea right here, that's the pre-chorus. This thing over here, I know that would make my good re-kick before the hook. And this thing, well, that's fast, right? This other thing, that's slow. And before you know it, I got pencil marks all over this thing. All those little random thoughts that I would have went, yeah.
Right.
They're here. So the creativity never just wanders away. It's always a little bit active.
Yeah.
But it's hard to keep it straight sometimes. The little micro ideas, you can't keep them straight, especially the older you get. There's other shit that life demands you take care of. Like if your parent, oh geez. Yeah. So taking little notes really, really fucking helps. The warboard, the notes, and turning off your social media.
Yes.
Turn off your social media. It'll wait.
There's nothing
Whatever
more
it is
distracting.
that it'll wait. Like that, comment that somebody made, it'll be there, tomorrow.
Right.
It'll be there later tonight.
Right.
It's not as important as that fleeting moment of creative inspiration that if you're constantly being distracted by your notifications, it'll win. Your social media with your friend will win out over your genius idea all day long. That's the way it works.
Right.
Because they want you to pay attention to your social media device. I'm talking about they again. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not. I'm just saying that we as humans have a lot of weaknesses, and this is one that gets exploited and taken advantage of a lot. Some people don't mind, but if you're trying to do something creative, you don't want your brain constantly binged or pinged. Yeah, you don't want your brain constantly pinged by somebody else when you're trying to receive inspiration from the metal gods.
Right.
Ooh, sounds like I'm one of those guys.
Hey, man.
Metal gods.
Hey, I praise the metal gods daily.
Well, good. I do too. I don't know if there actually are any. It's just my way of somehow codifying the concept of the larger spirit that seems to give metal folks inspiration.
And connection.
Metal gods.
Right. And a sort of connection, and something unlike, we talk about it a lot on the show, something you don't see in pop or country. This like global metal family, for lack of a better word.
Well, this is actually what got me into metal. Was I went on 70,000 Tons of Metal in 2011. As I was dressed like a golf pro. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know anybody that...
Do you play golf?
I love golf. Love golf.
Okay.
Golf. I see golf as a very creative sport. It's extremely creative, like fighting. Like...
The singer that sings on all the Saurian records, Mike Brazil, is a fantastic golfer. Man, is that guy good. He plays at the Masters every year in Augusta.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
He's the kind of guy that just lives on the golf course every day.
Yeah. It's
playing.
I often think if you want to get to know somebody, take them golfing. Because you'll get to know them more in that 3 to 4 or 5 hours than you'll ever get to know them. You could spend all day with them every day, and you won't learn as much about them as you do if you play golf with them once.
Interesting.
You know, that's a lot like the thing in the Matrix movie when the guy goes, "You will never know someone as well as when you fight them." It's the same principle.
Yeah.
I believe. You will get to know them in ways you could never possibly understand unless you put them in that context.
Yeah.
It's a contest of actuality, right? Because you're doing things. You're not just talking about things. You're doing things.
Yeah, and with golf, if you hit a bad shot, right? How do you deal with it? Do you get mad? Do you throw your clubs? What do you do? Right? How do you recover from it? If you have a bad hole, does it ruin your day? Do you ruin everyone else's day around you? Like, there's so many things. Like, I often say golf mimics life, right? Because, like, when I play golf, if I hit a bad shot, I might yell out, "fuck." And then I'll be like, okay, I got to fix the next shot I have to fix and see how I'm going to get through it. But you'll play with some people, and it's just like a full meltdown. And it ruins everyone's day around you, like, completely. So that's why I like golfing. But anyway, so I go on 70,000 Tons of Metal like this, and I was expecting to be, like, hated because I was just such an outsider. But what ended up happening was I met a family I didn't even know existed. I ended up partying with bands. I made friends with bands because they were like, "What are you doing? You're wearing golf clothes." I was like, "Well, I don't know. I don't even know metal. You know, like, I'm just here to support my friends who are running this thing. So I want to be on it, you know, and support them." And they're like, "Oh, you know these guys?" I was like, yeah. And they're like, "Oh, okay." And then next thing I know, we're drinking beers and I'm partying with the bands, and I'm like dressed in golf clothes. And I made so many lifelong friends on that boat, including Bruce.
Yeah, that's where we met.
Nice.
Yeah.
2011.
The metal is a community. It's a very open community, from what I've seen.
Yes.
In my short lifetime. People will welcome you into that community with open arms and accept you for whoever and whatever you are because you enjoy the same music.
Yeah.
you're probably okay.
That's
And
right.
it's true. We've been all over the world, and there's something about metal that unites people, even if they can't barely even speak the same language. We still have something in common.
Yeah, it's the riff, right? The riff
It's
is
the
the connector.
riff. It's
Yeah.
the metal heart.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, are you planning on taking this out on the road, this project, or is that not a thing?
I don't think so. I think I'm busy enough touring with Nile. If I were really going to do this project right in a live context, sorry, it would take a much larger budget. You would need like Hans Zimmer kind of budget to
Right.
really do this right. And you know what? I don't have Hans Zimmer's budget. I got my budget,
Right.
which is like, it's a death metal side project budget. It's not even a proper metal budget. It's like a metal side project budget, which is,
Yeah. I could see this lending itself
the
towards like
fact.
a Broadway thing almost, or maybe not Broadway, but a theater thing for sure.
Yes. Yes. Um,
But I see what you're saying about, expenses and that sort of thing as well.
it's not financially
Right.
viable. No, that's
I
not
could
right.
see it. I could
Not
actually see it being used.
economically viable. You guys know the movie Falling Down?
Yeah.
Did you guys ever see that movie, Michael Douglas Falling Down? There's this one guy protesting outside the bank about not being economically viable. Right? I always loved that scene.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
economically viable.
I actually could see this music getting a lot in films,
Hmm.
and getting licensing with film work. Honestly,
I
that
love
like
film soundtracks.
as
Yeah.
soon as I heard it, I was like, wow, this is great. This belongs in a movie somewhere. You know, that was my thought.
So we're putting that out in the
Well,
universe for you.
it's a good thought.
Right. Well, Carl,
Somebody asked me recently, hey, Carl, what would be the best movie for you to do a soundtrack for? I was like, the best movie is one where they actually fucking pay me. That's the best movie.
you're right. Nice.
Where they actually pay me. But you're done with those $1 film deals?
Yeah, or video game. Sometimes when you do music for a video game, that's no guarantee the video game's ever coming out.
Right.
So I've done music for a couple of failed video games. Uh,
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
right. So that's like that maybe wasn't the best use of my time.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
guess we
when
don't
you-
know until it's done, right?
Especially when you're
That's
hoping
the
for the
gamble.
mechanicals from it, and then it doesn't happen. Like the whole deal
Right,
was
because
the
they will
mechanicals.
lowball you. Right, on a prospective music job like that, they lowball you because we'll give you something on the back end. We'll give you a nice rate, but get paid up front. That's my advice from life experience. Don't do stuff on prospectus. Get paid.
Yeah, yeah. I've audio engineered that when I first started recording and becoming an audio engineer. My mentor told me, he's like, you're going to meet a lot of people that will work on like a total budget. He's like, never do that. Always work by the hour. He's like, if you want to give them a budget for the whole record, you can, but you have to set the time limits, start and finish, and anything past that is hourly. And that was like a really important lesson to learn, because I didn't take that advice at first, and it really bit me in the ass.
And then you saw why that advice was so relevant.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Because
So-
a song
Yeah.
is never done, right? It's never done until you run out of time, money, or both. That's it.
I put like an artificial deadline on when I was working on this Saurian Apocalypse because I knew exactly that. Like I would just keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. So I was like, all right, it's got to be done by November, because that's when the guys got time to mix it, master it, and get it by then.
Were you successful in doing that? Did you stay to it?
I was.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nice.
So-
It forces you to make actual decisions, like, yes, this is good, no, that is not good.
Right.
And, like, make the decision, right? If you can make a few decisions, you can get on with life.
Yeah. Well, in the digital realm, it's so hard to commit, right? Like when
Yes.
you used to work on tape, you had to make decisions while you were recording because you only had so many
Yes.
compressors, you only had so many of this, right? So while you tracked, you had to make that decision and commit.
Mm-hmm.
But in the digital world, you could just sit there for hours and be like, and you're like, dude, the kick drum's now out of tune and we haven't even hit the snare yet. You know, like,
I know,
let's make a decision
right?
here.
Let's make decisions.
Yeah.
You got to make decisions. Otherwise, you're paralyzed. You get nowhere.
So I don't mean to interrupt. I've got my Zoom reminder. We've only got about 5 minutes left on the free timer. So
What time is my next one? Oh, my next one's at 4, so I'm already
Oh, you're
actually
already-
late.
well, that's
Yeah.
good though. You must have had fun talking to us if you stayed this long. So I appreciate your time.
Oh, well, thank you, boys.
Thank you, man.
so much.
Thanks again
Yeah,
for
it
the
was a lot of
tunes as
fun.
well, man, and branching out into something crazy and also knowing about the great Canadian band, the Tea Party.
Tea Party. Thank you, Ashmedi. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Good luck with the
Awesome.
everything you got coming up, and I will talk to you soon.
All right. Take
Be
care,
safe.
Bruce.
Hey, we'll see you soon.
Chris.
Cheers,
All right,
man. See you later, man. Thanks.
Bye.
Ever wonder what a punch from Elton John feels like?
Or how you'd cope with having turned down the chance to be in Nirvana?
Or what signal Keith Richards gives when he wants you to get the hell out of his hotel room?
Fans of Too Much Effing Perspective don't have to wonder, because they've heard these exact stories and a jillion others on our podcast. I'm Alex Hoffman, former tour manager for Radiohead.
And I'm musician and comedy writer Alan Keller. On the TMEP show, we get guests like Nancy Wilson from Heart, Jeremiah Freites from the Lumineers, and Modern Family's Julie Bowen to tell us things they may have only shared with their therapist, clergy, or a TMZ stringer.
So join us on Too Much Effing Perspective. That's EFFING Perspective. The only podcast you crank up to 11.